that children who lose their parents young, for them crossing their parents' age is a milestone.
It's a milestone.
So
Mm.
I'm 50, like I said, 54 is the milestone.
Mm.
I must have felt, it's my imagination today, I must have felt that what if I never retire and I never have the luxury of being this person who can do something for greater good after retirement,
Okay.
right? So I might as well do what I can when I have the energy. So one of the reasons for transition from the corporate world was that this is the time
This is
to
the time to do
do
this, yeah.
Mm.
to do what I want to do,
Mm.
and if not now, when?
Then
Then
when, yeah.
when?
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Living Well. This is Smriti Khanna,
And this is Mahesh Menon.
and today we have with us a wonderful guest, and we're going to hopefully have a great podcast because there's so much that I want to know from what she does and know about what she does. We have with us Ms. Bhavana Issar, and she runs an organization called Caregiver Saathi, and that deals with a very niche area in care of people who have illnesses or ailments, or even those who may not be ill but are frail and they need care and support. So, welcome,
Thank
and
you.
we'd like to hear a few things from you about what you do.
Delighted to be here uh, with two lovely people. I'm so glad that you're doing what you're doing. I hope that it will create that dent in the universe.
Mm.
Can you begin by telling us a little bit about yourself, Bhavna?
Okay, when you've lived 50 years, a little bit about yourself can be a little much. So I turned 50 this year, and this is
Wow.
my golden year. I can't say I was looking forward to this, but looking back, I think I have recently been associated with the idea of caregivers and caregiving because I have invested a very big part of my active life to shaping the idea of Caregiver Saathi. Um, but that's not all of who I am.
That's true.
I I had spent professionally a large amount of my working career in the corporate world in HR, and I then specialized in OD and behavioral sciences, and that led me to build my consulting. And a big part of my life and my life experience had been being in a family where my father, who was a pilot in the Air Force, had a rare neurological condition called multiple system atrophy when I was in my teens. And that impacted us. It impacted my mother, who was the primary caregiver, and all of us in the family. And I, who was the elder, needed to step up and step in. And I think that life experience has significantly shaped and informed who I am. I also believe that I'm significantly impacted by the fact that I come from a family which relocated at the time of partition. So my grandparents relocated at the time of partition. My great grandfather was a doctor in Lahore.
Wow.
So I have a connection with healthcare. And he had died young on the call of duty.
Okay.
So he used to consult with very, very poor people in Lahore, and he had typhoid and was still called upon, and he chose to go for the call without caring for himself.
My God.
And it turned out to be fatal, and he was only 40, and it impacted the rest of the family,
Yes.
right? But I do believe that, West Pakistan, which is Lahore area, was very progressive when it came to education for women and our family particularly. So I come from a family where it's a collection of very, very strong women,
Mm.
educated women.
Hmm.
I'm told my great grandmother was a horse rider in her times. So I'm grateful for that lineage. And I think that has impacted or that informs who I am. Um, so that's the background. And having worked in the corporate world for a while, I was associated with Sumedhas as an organization, which is in the space of process work. Looking at my core life experience, being a caregiver to the primary caregiver. My mother was the primary
Yeah,
caregiver,
yeah. That's
right?
an interesting concept. Nobody talks about the caregiver to
To the
the
caregiver.
caregiver.
So it made me think that what is it that I can do about my core life experience, which was about losing my dad to a neurological rare condition. And my mother was the primary caregiver. So, what is it that I can do about that? As is prevalent, most people often, like if you're impacted by cancer, you start working for the patients of cancer,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I did start by looking at, okay, what can I do for patients of MSA?
yeah.
And I was very quickly faced with the idea that I don't know much about it. Neither am I medically trained, nor was I the primary caregiver, so I don't even know what to advise about symptoms
Yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever
yeah.
else, right? So I recalibrated and said, actually, caregiving is the common denominator across a variety of medical conditions, whether it is Parkinson's or MSA or epilepsy or mental illnesses or aging or childcare. Caregiving is the common denominator.
Yeah.
And the caregivers are invisible,
They
often
are.
unrecognized,
They are.
underappreciated,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
last in
Yeah.
the priority list. For me, Caregiver Saathi is at the intersection. So the other interesting thing is that I was actually studying to be a techie. In my graduation, I studied computer science. So my heart and my life lights up when I think about technology. But I had to unfortunately give that up to get into management in order to be able to start earning much and soon. So, Caregiver Saathi for me is at the intersection of my life experience of being a caregiver to a caregiver, my professional expertise of working with behavioral sciences, HR, people, process work, and my passion for technology.
Wow. And so you found a way to bring everything together.
I hope so. And one of the things that I think that really integrates this is actually my hobbies. So I am a motorcyclist by hobby and a crocheteer by hobby.
So how so I can understand the connection between your motorcycling and your grandmother's horse riding. तो ये आज का घोड़ा है, you know.
Correct. Actually, a Pakistani friend of mine said the same thing.
Really.
Yes.
So first of all, thanks for sharing that very personal experience about your father with MSA, which is a very rare condition. So I'm sure when you started out, uh, one of the challenges would of course have been to identify enough people who face
Yeah.
conditions like MSA because it's a rare condition. And you mentioned that you came into this branch. What I'm still not clear about is how did that transition from the corporate world to what you do today? How did that happen? Was it like an abrupt thing? Was it like this epiphany that you had with reflecting on your life and all of it coming together, or was it a gradual process? How did that transition happen?
Yeah. I think I can look back and think about it like a gradual process because I think while this was the most pivotal experience as I look back at it, I don't think it was the only experience, right? Not only have I been perhaps a caregiver to a caregiver, and we don't use these terms for ourselves, we don't identify as caregivers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And trivia for you is that there isn't a term equivalent to caregiver in any of the Indian languages.
Interesting.
So I've said this many times, but you will find terms like sevak, sahayak, timardar. But these are not terms you use for family members.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So sociologically speaking, we don't even have a term
Yeah.
for a family member who's a caregiver.
Is that is that because it's understood, or these roles are supposed to be already ingrained into the system? Is that
That's right.
inbuilt,
That's
so
right.
that they don't have to be
Yes.
repeated, or what do you think that could be because of?
So it is embedded in our familial roles. And if
Okay.
you talk to a large number of people, and I talk to thousands of caregivers on a daily basis, a large number of people will say that I do this because I'm a good daughter.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's a part of being a
It's part-
daughter, a
yeah,
wife,
yeah, yeah.
a partner, a parent,
Mm.
and it is inherent in it. So therefore, it is a part of our identity, and it is not a role that I take.
Yeah.
And there is a difference between identifying as one versus taking it as a role. So when you take the role of a caregiver, you can step in and out of it. But if you identify as a caregiver, there is no stepping in and out of it.
Then you
Uh,
are
you
just
are-
a caregiver 24/7.
Then that's who you are.
That's who you are.
Right? And very interestingly for me right now, Caregiver Saathi is also particularly meaningful because it speaks to the idea of gender equality. Women are stereotyped to be better caregivers, and women are expected to be caregivers, and women do shoulder unpaid care work,
Yeah.
which holds them back from their dreams. It holds them back from financial independence and many, many things. So I am very invested in gender equality or equity. And to me, if we don't understand care related work and make it gender agnostic, we will not be able to move the needle on gender equity.
Yes, because you mentioned something like someone who faces guilt because I'm not being a good daughter or a good wife. So the first few words that you used were all women, So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what got me thinking, and I suddenly realized what you say suddenly makes sense, because it's assumed that it's going to be uh, the daughter. That's the role
Yeah.
that we are so used to seeing in our practice, clinical practice as
Daughters-in-law.
well.
Daughters,
Daughters-in-law.
daughters-in-law, wives. Whereas it's not, I mean, it's almost as if you see a patient coming into the OPD with their caregiver. You will be surprised or even dismayed if you find out that the female partner, wife, daughter isn't taking care of the patient. But you may not be as surprised if you find that the male caregiver
Is not
if the male caregiver isn't spending so much
is not
time
spending
with
time, and yeah.
the patient.
That's right, because we also have stories that are told to us through films, through serials, where the villainous woman character is an ambitious woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, she wants to be happy.
Yeah. So you see, stories around us drive our social
Oh,
conditioning,
absolutely.
right? So if a man were to say that my caregiving is restricted to being the financial provider, it is okay. Single fathers get a very different quality of support than single
Than the
mothers.
single mothers.
Right? And that's caregiving too.
But I want to know, what does Caregiver Saathi do?
Yeah. So, when I started Caregiver Saathi, like I said, it was, for me, the idea has kind of taken shape only over time. I was very invested in doing something which I thought would be my swan song. It was unconscious at the time, but I think it has become clear to me as I talk about it more and more these days, which is that you were talking to me about how did the transition happen, and I think the two are linked. So I didn't quite answer that question, which is that I had been not just a caregiver to the caregiver, I had also been a caregiver myself, as a parent, as a partner, as a sibling, right? And as a granddaughter as well. And in taking these various roles, along with being an ambitious corporate working woman, it had a huge impact on me. Now, my personality is such that I do get bored easily. So I believe that I had reached a point in my career where I was either bored of doing the same set of things, or I was burnt out, or I really wanted to do something that felt like I was feeding my soul.
Hmm.
And everyday life doesn't feed our soul. So it was a combination of all of this. And
So bored, burnt out, and not enough food for the soul. Not enough chicken soup for the soul.
something like that. And I was 39 and my husband gifted me a motorcycle for my birthday. And I think my 40s have been quite adventurous.
So when did you start motorcycling?
I used to ride my father's scooter.
Okay.
So I was lucky to grow up in a household where I was encouraged to do anything that anybody could do. My father had a scooter, and it was quite a rite of passage. If you turn 18, you get the right to get a license and ride Papa's scooter. And I used to ride his scooter, and it was a Bajaj Chetak. Pleased to note the name Chetak.
Chetak.
With a horse, so
But Bajaj Chetak used to be the standard
It was.
scooter in everybody's house.
I was
universal
horribly mean.
conspiracy.
What?
इसार फैमिली के औरतों को घोड़े पे बिठाना ही है.
Correct.
And then cut to when you were on your 39th birthday and
Yeah. We had gone to Goa for a holiday, and well, not cut to really, because I did con my brother into giving me his motorcycle in
okay.
between.
So there was a lot
So
of
there's a little bit of thing going
There were
on.
enough Chetaks.
enough Chetaks.
Yes. So I was in Hyderabad when I was working there, and I used to ride my brother's motorcycle. And it was really fun because the security guard in my office would say things like, "Aapko bhari nahi lagti?" And, like I was one of the 2 women in Hyderabad who used to ride a motorcycle. So it was,
There were 2 women in Hyderabad.
we were 2 of us. I have never spoken with her, but we used to cross each other in the morning every day.
Okay.
And there was an understanding.
Yeah. So
Hi.
you
Hi.
you control East Hyderabad, I control West Hyderabad. Only 2 women are allowed. Territorial, so
I really wish I can find that woman one of these days. But yes, so cut to 39 and then saying that, yeah, now we can have a bike, so let's have a bike.
okay.
So then bike happened. And simultaneously, I think all that boredom, whatever was happening, and, find the purpose of my life and dharmic life and whatever else. I think one other factor which I have spoken about on other occasions is the fact that I think I was very restless. I still am a very restless person because it is not settled. I feel that I'm running out of time. I've always felt that I'm running out of time. And I think it is definitely impacted by the fact that my dad was rather young.
Yeah.
He was 54. And the number 54 has been a number to contend with me, and an age. In fact, a couple of years ago, I was listening to Anderson Cooper's podcast of All That There Is, where he is unpacking grief. And he speaks with one of his guests who said that apparently it's a documented phenomenon that children who lose their parents young, for them crossing their parents' age is a milestone.
It's a milestone. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm 50, like I said. 54 is the milestone. I think I wanted to do, I must have felt, it's my imagination today, I must have felt that what if I never retire and I never have the luxury of being this person who can do something for greater good after retirement, right?
Okay.
So I might as well do what I can when I have the energy. So one of the reasons for transition from the corporate world was that this is the time
This is
to
the time to do this, yeah.
to do what I want to do. And if not now, when?
Then
When?
Right? And so that led to this whole idea. And I was toying with a tech-based business idea.
Yeah, that's because of your interest in
because of my interest. So the two competing ideas was, do I want to do something in tech or life experience? And in 2011, I actually thought of doing a QR code based fulfillment
That's interesting.
pipeline. That was 2011.
So,
And
sorry to interrupt you there, but when you said that you moved over from the corporate world to this caregiver Saathi, which is exploring your human experience and you're searching your soul for something. Before we talk about your tech project, I just wanted to understand, how did your corporate background help in coming from this space to this space? Like, who did you meet and how did you set up this concept of, how do I go about it? Because if someone were to tell me from the medical space to go into a different branch, I wouldn't know how to go about
Yeah.
it. But probably what I'd use is method. I'd probably use, okay, this is go in a methodical way, because that's what that doctors do generally. So when it comes to a corporate approach from your HR, how did that help you in setting up this vision and creating this roadmap that took fruit later?
so this is where being a motorcyclist who enjoys going off the road
Okay.
helps. In 2015, so 2011 is when I left my last job.
And that's why you're talking about the QR code based
Then I was
project.
like, yeah, I was toying around with what is it that I want to do, blah, blah. And, like, I want to do this. So maybe I want to do tech and all of that. At the same time, my motorcycle came into being. I got in touch with, a group of women, Bikerni, which is run by Urvashi Patole. She's a lovely woman. So although we were the two women in Hyderabad, I never thought about saying that, oh, how do you take motorcycles to a larger number of women, right?
Okay.
I didn't think that, but Urvashi did, and I really admire her for that. So she's set up this community of motorcyclists, of women motorcyclists. It's called Bikerni, and I became a part.
Bikerni.
Yeah, I became a part of that, and through that, I got in touch with some other women. 7 of us in 2015 rode to Mana Pass, which is the highest motorable road beyond Badrinath,
Oh wow. From
Dehradun. And we also got the Limca record for that, to be the first.
amazing.
And for me, that particular journey was momentous because it was as much a journey of the outer terrain as it was an inner terrain, right? I remember very vividly on one particular curve thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing?
How many days did it take you?
It took us about 12 days. Yeah. And I'm just saying, what am I doing? And there were so many times. I mean, obviously, it is you fall so many times, and there are tensions in the group, and like any other expedition, right? So there's a lot going on. And in that journey, you have to motivate yourself a lot, right? And although you are a group, you're also alone.
Yeah. I mean, you will be spending most of your time alone.
On your bike.
On that.
And I remember very vividly that one of my favorite songs, of course, is Sukhwinder's song from Chak De, which is Kuch Kariye, Kuch Kariye. So I would sing that to myself on the bike. And I think that song is really important because it also speaks to, the song is about Kuch kariye, nas nas meri khole. Koi te chal zid phadiye, doobe tariye ya mariye. So I think that led, and that set of experiences, I mean, I can write a book about it. There were a whole lot of experiences that led me to believe that I can actually do something that might be uncharted.
Correct.
That might not be a method already.
Correct.
Right?
So that out of the box thinking existed, that this is a space which is not addressed, and kuch kariye, hum kar lenge ye. So when you decided this and you full josh is, how's the josh is high, and then you decide to go about it, was there any meeting that you had set up with people, or were there any guides or anything available for you, resources at that time?
So I think things evolved organically,
Okay.
like this conversation is evolving organically. I also think that I talk about this also a lot. My spirit animal is the bumblebee. Do you know about bumblebees? Aerodynamically, a bumblebee should not be able to fly.
Mm.
The size of the wing and the body shape, etc. But it's a miracle of nature that the bumblebee does not know aerodynamics, right?
So it flies
And
anyway.
thank God, so it flies. So it doesn't have to be science or method.
Correct,
It can
correct.
be intuition, passion,
Correct,
and
correct.
desire.
Mm.
And because I also am very fond of Urdu poetry,
Correct, correct.
I believe that is one of my favorite couplets, which is मंजिलें उन्हीं को मिलती हैं जिनके सपनों में जान होती है. पंखों से क्या होता है, हौसलों से उड़ान हो.
No, beautiful.
So you really
How
need.
lovely.
So they may or may not be a method. And I think sometimes I look back and say, maybe it would have helped me if I had had a method.
Yeah, but if there are not many resources around, even with the best of methods, you've just been making your way as
Yeah.
That's
because a
right.
unique
So, an
experience
NGO around caregiving, this is one of the only ones this is the
That
only
I know
one
of,
that
yeah.
I know of. There are organizations or NGOs that also focus on caregivers, but usually they are disease specific, system specific,
Yeah.
around one particular condition. But Caregiver Saathi, what really struck me about it when I came to know about it was that it's open to everyone. They will try and have it in such a way that people with similar experiences can come together. So people who are caring with individuals, caring for individuals of one particular illness can come together. But you could be a caregiver for anyone, and you
Correct.
could still be able to join or to be part of them, or to take their resources, take help of their resources, any of that. And that's the interesting thing that I found about Caregiver Saathi, is that it's actually expanding now into paid caregivers, how to streamline uh, accessing systems, accessing resources for even people. Like all of this is something
Yeah.
that you are looking at, and that's very unique, Bhavna. That's very unique.
So,
Really.
when you say that there are organizations that focus on caregiving, for example, you have national organizations which are which practice palliative medicine and
That's
care
right.
and so on. Has there been any interaction with them, or any collaboration, or in the sense any traffic in either one way or both ways, or from your side to them, which has kind of added value to what it is
Of
that either
course.
of you do?
Of
There have been, yeah,
course.
yeah.
Of course. I was, as I was building this and I was kind of reaching out to my own networks, one of my contacts, my friend is Dr. Kushnuma, who did her internship at Pallium India. And she told me when at TIS there was a screening of the Hippocratic Oath, which is a film on Dr. Raj,
Oh, yes.
and
Okay.
it happened in Mumbai, and I happened to see that. And on that occasion, I met him, and I met Smriti Rana as well, and it was lovely because. I think I met a large number of people. I also met Dr. Rajam there, and you know, uh, that opened the world of palliative care for me. So I didn't think about Caregiver Saathi as palliative care.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah,
That's
Yeah. But I do remember one of my friends saying, when he listened to my concept, saying, "Oh, that's palliative care." And I said, maybe, but I'm not sure. And even when I listen to palliative care, in my mind, I'm thinking a slightly bigger set. But there's no harm. Let's learn and figure out. So I'm very grateful that at IAPC 2019, I think, just before the pandemic, the one that happened in Kochi.
Yeah.
Yeah, the national
I
conference.
and I happened to there was a section of opening the conference with voices.
Okay.
And Dr. Raj invited me to represent the voice of caregivers. That was
Oh,
my
that's beautiful.
first
Oh, how
presentation.
That's beautiful.
lovely.
That's beautiful.
And he has been very, very kind and very generous, and he saw what I was doing, and that's where I made my first public presentation, and I got a lot of attention.
Oh,
Dr.
lovely.
Armida was there, and I met so many people, and I presented a framework of what we are trying to do. I was a little struck when people were taking pictures of that. Like, I'm not sure about that, but so I think along the way, a very large number of people have been very supportive, and it was very important for me to make connections with the medical and the healthcare fraternity.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because I'm not that.
So you said that when you thought about palliative care, you said that's a broad area.
Yes.
But as a palliative care person, when I look at caregiving, I feel caregiving is a broad area. You get
It's
what I'm
interesting.
saying? Yeah, because
Yeah.
you hear what I'm saying, right? Yeah.
See, initially, I was interested in people with terminal illnesses because that's where my thing came from.
That's where your experience came from.
It's only over time that I just realized that caregiving is actually caregiving for a child as well, and caregiving
Yeah,
for
it's such a
all
broad
kinds of
spectrum of,
caregiving can be extended. So I have to constantly straddle keeping the big and the small, big picture and the small thing simultaneously, right? So I do
Okay.
want people to identify primarily as caregivers. And I do think that most other organizations identify with the medical condition primarily.
Yes. That you've hit the nail on the head. That's
Right?
exactly what I was trying to say. That
So I want people who are caring for individuals navigating dementia. I don't like to call them dementia patients. They are navigating dementia. To learn from those who are navigating chronic kidney failure. And we don't have those opportunities. And you can learn from each other, and caregiving can be a common denominator.
Yes. I mean, anybody can tell you that it's important to take a break, right?
Among other
While
things.
caregiving, among other things.
Yes.
But yeah, you're right.
So, for example, what do we do at Caregiver Saathi was your question. I think at the time that I started, it was really important because many people didn't even identify caregiver. So, for us to simply have awareness, education, and an understanding that there is a thing called caregiver beyond your being good son, good daughter, etc. Caregiving is an idea needed to be done because people used to look at me very strangely when I would talk about it. I mean, of course, an experienced person like Dr. Raj would understand what I'm saying, but I mean, everybody is not.
But what
Dr.
I
Raj.
find interesting here is that it's that what's in a name thing that even palliative care goes through.
Yes.
Because when I speak to a patient or a patient relative and I say that I'm a palliative care physician, their next question will be, what is palliative care? And so it's almost like, caregiving also has that same problem with the name, that it has to be explained, that there is probably no other way to say it. It's because if you define a thing, then it if you name a thing, then you give it definition, right? And then you give it an identity. And so even with palliative care, we are kind of having a tussle with that.
I can share a similar experience. So when I practice pain management and as a doctor who practices pain management, and they ask me, what do you do? I say, I practice pain management. And the default understanding is that's what all doctors are supposed to be doing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, why do you have a separate name for your branch?
Yeah.
So then caregiving, as you rightly said, by naming it, you have taken it away from that taken for granted kind of a role with guilt or additional uh, trappings into the domain of a more structured, organized, more. That's probably the method that you're bringing into it.
I'll bring in the idea of the role and identity. Okay. When a large number of people think being caregiver is that person that you hire to do your activities of daily living,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right? That's
But
how
sometimes
industry also uses the term.
that's what they
That's
sometimes
industry.
called caretaker also.
Caretaker, caregiver, carer. In UK, they are
Carer.
called family members are called carers, and the paid guys are called caregivers, care attendants,
Yeah.
etc., etc. Right now, it is valuable to look at it like a role. For example, if caregiving is a role, then I need to learn about it,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to prepare for it. I can take resources for it, right? I can take a break from it. I have other roles.
Yeah.
I'm also a working person. I'm also a mother. I'm also a friend. I'm also a
My
whatever.
own person.
So it is one of the many balls that I need to juggle,
Okay.
right? So I've kind of taken it out of myself. So I'm Bhavna, who is also mother, sister, caregiver. Right? If it is my identity, then I also have the gift of unending reservoir of energy, passion, love,
Empathy.
just a sense of duty, empathy, maybe. But when I think about it, this is who I am. I care for people. Then I will run on steam also, right?
And run out of steam also.
Yeah, that's the
Maybe
caregiver.
later. So, there are many people who that when they are doing intense care, let's say somebody is going through a surgery, somebody is really unwell in the hospital, etc., the family members will run on
Yeah.
a very different adrenaline.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
You're right.
Where is that coming from? That's coming from because I'm a good son and this is what I should do.
Be doing. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Even if the ICU doesn't have a place to sit or whatever, I will whatever.
Yes.
So there is an advantage for it to be an identity. Because it gives you that extra, like this irrational bumblebee-ness comes from,
Yeah. I
right?
get what you're
Doesn't
trying to
it
say.
doesn't it also open you to, as she said, running out of steam, or what we refer to as burnout?
Correct.
In medicine, we know professionally, like
Yes.
1 in 5 doctors in the US
That's right.
are either on the verge of burnout or cutting down work or planning a career change.
Yes. Which is why it has to be a combination of the role and identity.
Okay.
Those professionals, and you would have seen doctors who are or nurses or caregivers who are able to say, this is my job.
Yeah.
They are able to draw boundaries better.
And protect themselves.
There are no boundaries when it is your identity.
Yeah.
Right?
So for doctors, it's a professional identity. For
Correct.
a surgeon doing a 10-hour surgery, it's a professional. For those 10 hours, he will be just completely committed to whatever surgery it is that he or she is doing, right? But at the end of that 10 hours, he or she has the ability to be able to step out of that identity and then turn back to being a parent or a friend or a whatever, motorcyclist, whatever it is.
That's right. I can then replenish myself, right? So you need a balance of both. Both, whether you're a professional caregiver, whether you're in the healthcare setting, because why do you need the identity of a caregiver in a professional setting, like doctors like yourselves? The reason that you are extraordinarily good in what you do is not because you look at your roles. It's because you identify as compassionate individuals. Now, you have to have both because it is a healing profession. You need to have compassion for the people again and again. You have seen illness again and again. You have seen death again and again, and it takes something out of you, right? But if you treat it like a clinical job, like a role, you will not be
You have
good in
to
our job.
you have to find an in between.
Exactly. So it
You
is a
have to find a way
combination
of
of both.
blending the two.
That's right.
Yeah,
So
you're
it's a
right.
combination of the two. This is where my professional work in behavioral sciences
Okay.
helps me articulate it for people to say, in the world of caregiving, if I were to explain it to healthcare professionals or people, how would I explain it to them?
And when you do this, because this is something which is a little different from your role as the founder of, say,
That's right.
Caregiver Saathi, because this is more of a almost a philosophical bent to it, and that's what you're saying, that this is what I also want to put out there. This is
Yeah.
the how do people say accept it, or how do they take it? Is it understood? Is it questioned? Is it
What has your experience been in Bombay, for example, just in the city that you live in?
I wish I give it a little more attention that what do people think or say.
Yeah, so the bumblebee just flies. बम्बलबी वो बाकी गए तेल लेने, हम उड़ेंगे.
हमारे सपनों में जान
जान
है.
है.
I think so. Sometimes people are a little like amused and a little foxed and saying like, "Why do you do what you do?" So a lot of people ask me like, "So, what's the business model?
Okay.
You're like, how do you make money?" I don't, right? It is not the motivation to do this. If I wanted to make money, I would have continued my corporate career. I mean, I was certainly making.
That is an important question to answer. Like, I mean,
Yes.
the answer to that question must be there. If it is this model that I am doing, it has to be a chosen model. It's something that you have chosen for yourself, right?
Yes. So I'll just say that it was a difficult choice.
Yeah.
And one can think of saying, so I did make that choice when I was earlier in my career, right? I took that career which would have given me a good earning.
Yes.
Because I needed that at that time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I had reached a position of privilege thanks to my my financial independence, thanks to a very supportive partner, thanks to a very encouraging family, that I could take a call and say, okay, this is not a consideration now. Now, if you
Yes.
want to do something, what do you want to do? I think it's a luxury. I'm not
Yes.
blind to the fact that it's a privilege and a luxury to be able to go after something
Absolutely.
without consideration of everyday living. So, having said that, I thought that let's understand this landscape. Let's understand what is entailing in this. We will get to the point of
Yeah.
the resources, the financial resources, at the right time. You see, I also come from a family of Brahmins, and we value Saraswati. And our Hindu philosophy says that those of us who worship Saraswati, you focus on going after Saraswati. Lakshmi will follow.
Yeah. So a question for both of you, in the sense, when we talk about self-care, when we talk about taking care of ourselves, which is a very common theme in palliative
Yes.
medicine, and caregiver distress and caregiver burnout. So how does this concept of a caregiver and self-care fit in? If I were to ask you, if I tell you that you have to do something tomorrow as a caregiver, and you also have to do self-care, will you be like looking at it as an important part of the education you give caregivers or to yourself? And I'll just ask the question to you also, that when you're in your initiative, is there room for self-care? Aapne bola role and identity, but are there any formal methods that you do for self-care?
Yeah.
So we just want you to talk about that.
I don't think I have approached self care formally. I think that's maybe that's maybe a drawback that we do, like that's a disservice that we do to ourselves as doctors,
as
that
medical
we
caregivers.
as medical caregivers, is that, and here I'm talking about it from a medical caregiving perspective, not say a family caregiving
Hmm.
perspective, that we just wait till we are at the end of our tether. Like we just stretch till we are at the end of our tether, and then we take a break and then we come back at it again. I mean, that is for I think most of my medical career, that is how I have done. The last few years when I was part of a team taking care of like children with really debilitating illnesses, which in itself is more psychologically, it can bring you down. That is when we explored more formal ways of either talking about it, maybe saying that okay, I am not in the mental frame of mind to see this child right now, or to be able to take care of this. Can I have someone else fill my space if someone else is if it's possible? So that is when we started looking at it in a more structured approach. And I would imagine that family caregivers would probably be doing something like that only, like just stretch until you break,
Until
kind of a thing.
Like I said, it is also like assumed that women will do it.
Hmm.
And there are all kinds of stereotypes and myths that women are great multitaskers, women are good sacrificing people. We also have the mythology of Savitri and
Yeah.
Shravan Kumar
Hmm.
and the likes, which govern a collective unconscious. Now, with those stories in the background, and then the stories of modern day film where Main Tulsi Tere Aangan Ki or whatever else over time, or advertisements which show women with multiple hands and
Hmm.
sacrificing for their families or children, or my children come
With
first,
a
and
smile.
pandemic pictures of woman with a oxygen cylinder cooking for the family. We've seen all that. They create a certain social conditioning and a narrative and an aspiration or an ideal to aspire for, right?
Yeah.
In the minds of young girls, right? That. And then I think in some ways, many young medical professionals choose medicine at a very, very young age, right? Either because they are really bright and that's a career that most bright children should take, or because they have certain examples, or I want to be a doctor because my family is doctors, etc., etc. So if you
And
kind of
medicine
see,
itself has a
yeah, hierarchy.
hierarchy in terms of
Yeah,
nobility of
that's
professions.
right. Now, if you look at the world of healthcare professionals or medical professionals, uh, you get social status, right? And there is some kind of a feeding that social status with your angels and gods people and what have
Hmm.
you, which is which dehumanizes you in many ways. So you start believing that you don't need human kind of things, which is rest,
Hmm.
which is replenishment, etc. And but the thing is that I wish that there was an understanding that you can replenish your reservoirs of compassion and empathy, which are critical success factors for a good healthcare professional. And that can come only from good sleep and good rest and good engagement with the rest of the world,
Yeah.
and not just patients and uh, unwell and unhappy and people in distress. So the idea of self-care is complicated. It is seen as being selfish. It is seen as it is something that you have to do alone.
So, you know what you said before about the roles and how it should be a mix between a role and an identity and something that you can step in and out of. Now, the individuals who are part of Caregiver Saathi, the caregivers who are part of Caregiver Saathi,
Yeah.
does this make sense to them?
Yeah. See, first off, I think Caregiver Saathi was set up, and I felt that we would have a lot of work to do in terms of simply creating awareness and education and sensitivity to the idea of caregivers. and caregiver support.
Huh.
So you see, you spoke about many organizations that look at caregivers by medical condition, and that's an ancillary thing. Many people, including medical fraternity, due respect, would call caregivers bystanders.
Yes.
And would also refer to family members as a way for ensuring adherence.
Huh.
Whether it is medicine adherence, exercise adherence, follow through of your
It's almost
medication.
as if it becomes their duty.
Correct.
To ensure
Yeah,
that.
the family caregiver is the extension of the medical system for care at home.
And also an extension of the patient, because if the
That's-
patient doesn't take their medicines,
That's right.
the family caregiver is said,
Is
what are
responsible.
you doing?
Right. And you would have encountered this many times, that actually the person who comes with the patient will typically be the male member of the family, the son or the husband, who is not doing anything
Of the
in terms
caregiver.
of daily care. Right? The daily care is actually being done by some woman in the house, and the person who comes along with it to kind of say, "Acha kya bataya aapne," etc., will be some other person. Then there will also be that many times the doctor will not tell the patient the condition, will tell the family member, and many family members will think that they should protect the patient from the diagnosis of a difficult condition, because they will lose their will to live, and this will be too heartbreaking or whatever. So we have all these things that are going on. And having interacted with a large number of people, in embarking for support systems for Caregiver Saathi. What is Caregiver Saathi? My core of my life experience was that as a young caregiver who was in her teens, who was studying, I was lonely. There was nobody I could talk to in my peer set who would understand what it means to have a father who has a terminal illness. Right? What does it mean to support a mother who is in her late 40s? Right? Or what does it mean for her to figure out or navigate a system where for 4 or 5 years we didn't even have a diagnosis? MSA was not even diagnosed in those times. This year it is 25 years to my dad passing, right? So 25 years ago, he was one of the few hundred cases who were identified around the world.
Wow.
Yeah. We used to get one newsletter from Sarah Matheson Trust in the UK in the post, which said, okay, here's what MSA may mean, or at that time it was referred to as Shy-Drager syndrome, and what it means for what could family do. There was nothing locally available. Doctors themselves didn't have anything to offer. There was nothing to talk about for support groups. There was no counseling. There was no family support. So Caregiver Saathi is being a Saathi to a caregiver during their caregiving journey. Now, a Saathi can be in many ways. So, a Saathi is someone who brings, bless you, someone who brings information, someone who is a support system, who's just a friend, who listens to you without judgment, who provides you access to something else, who holds your hand during times of distress, right? But now the idea of Saathi can be extended to many things. So for us, I believed that a smart way to start this would be to first invest our energy and focus on awareness, education, and advocacy for the idea that caregivers are not an extension of a medical condition, that they are a common denominator across a variety of medical conditions, and that they can come together to support each other.
So it started as the awareness of an idea of a caregiver.
That's right. Right? And then education. So then what we started doing was saying that it is really important for us to tell the stories of caregivers. Because like I told you, the prevalent stories of caregivers are Shravan Kumar and Savitri, which are held in our mind also in a certain way. If you read the story well, it is very different. But we hold Shravan Kumar like the guy who looked after his parents in a way. There's much more to Shravan Kumar. But we've conveniently edited
But
that
Shravan
out.
Kumar is now in our mind only that boy who, that man who
Yes.
just took his parents on his shoulders.
Yes,
for-
blind parents for their
for their
pilgrimage,
Pilgrimage.
and was and lost his life in the journey. Savitri is this incredible woman who brought her husband back from the dead, right? Whereas there is much more to Savitri. Savitri was not just this woman who brought her husband from the dead. She was a very, very intelligent woman who could argue with the god of death. So we've completely forgotten that she's a bright, intelligent woman. But we remember her as the diligent, dutiful wife.
So she was actually ingenious and not just sacrificial.
Correct. So these are the stories in our collective mind. There are many other stories of everyday caregivers like you and me. But if you talk to them, they will tell their stories with a sense of valor, sacrifice, or martyrdom. So it was really important for us to highlight stories of caregivers, which are stories of their struggles, their challenges, their grappling with shame, guilt, anger, disappointment, of everyday struggles, and of not necessarily winning a war against something.
But just surviving sometimes, just coping sometimes.
Yes, and moving, and this being a part of your life. So we do what is called on our platform conversations with gentle warriors, where gentle is more important than warriors. But
it's this whole narrative of any illness being
A battle or a fight.
Like you
Like
are
a
on
war.
you are on a battle against
We will
cancer.
fight it together.
We will fight this disease. It's
and we
been
call
this prevalent thing.
patients survivors,
Survivors,
and
warriors,
and like they're all called warriors.
So it's all war terminology which is used.
Yes. So I did have a lot of struggle when we had to call this name of gentle warriors, but you have to meet people where they are, right? So people relate with the idea of being warriors.
Correct.
So we wanted to encourage them to tell their
Correct.
stories. Now, at the same time, people didn't want to tell their stories in a like on a video or a podcast, because I don't want to be identified as this person who's talking about my resentment, my anger, my guilt, or my whatever unresolved issues.
So it's a
with
safe
the
space.
illness.
You need to provide a safe space.
Yes.
Yeah.
So video conversations with some people was easy, but with some people was not. So we came up with a podcast, which is an audio format, in which somebody else tells the story as if they are reading the caregiver's diary. So it's called Caregiver Diaries.
Oh, nice.
Lovely. Very interesting.
Nice concept.
So you read the diary. So for example, if you listen to that podcast, it will be Caregiver Diaries. You're reading the story of a caregiver. Now there, the caregiver is talking about, today I was livid with the patient. Right? We need to bring out the humanness in the caregiving journey. And humanness is the navrasas. Everything.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Right?
Yes. I mean, you can be angry at your loved one and still take care of them.
That's right.
You can still love them. You can
That's right. That's right. Anger is but a guardian of your sorrow. Right? Now, so we tell stories of caregivers in all formats that are possible. We also tell stories of healthcare professionals. And we say humanizing our healers, because during the pandemic, especially, the healthcare professionals went through hell.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that was a hell in healthcare.
Correct. Correct. And on one hand, you're dehumanizing by putting them on a pedestal and giving them wings and whatever. And on the other hand, being discriminated against and becoming untouchables really is that. And I think, like my grandmother Nani used to say, फरिश्ते से बेहतर है इंसान बनना, मगर उसमें लगती है मेहनत ज़्यादा, right? So I think being able to look at healthcare professionals as humans who are taking roles, who can make mistakes,
Yes.
who can, who are doing the best that they can, and we are in this together, is the sense that humanizing our healers is another series of conversations that we do. So we're a platform now, we are beginning to have conversations with corporates and saying that, listen, workplaces need to become caregiver friendly because most of your employees are going to have some form of caregiving responsibility or
Absolutely.
not during their journeys.
Absolutely.
And gone are the days where your personal life and professional life could be like watertight.
Yeah.
Right? So workplaces and organizations and leaders need to see the full person. I mean, you want to get 120% of the person, right? How can you ignore the caregiver aspect of their lives? So that's another piece in
So
terms
different
of
domains that you're dealing
yes.
with. Yeah.
And so this whole angle of saying that caregiving is held in our mind in a certain way, right? So we did some research to say how is caregiving represented in print and pictures,
Okay.
right? You will be surprised. There are very, very few books and stories about caregivers and caregiving from India, especially the challenges of caregiving. There are many authors in UK, Canada, and US who have spoken about caregiving challenges. So we invited those authors to talk about their stories. Caregiving in print and pictures is about that. And we also do something called real caregiving, which is reviewing films from the caregiver's point of view. Which is why from the 60s of Koshish and Main Tulsi Tere Angan Ki to Piku and Still Alice and Father and various other films, Lunchbox of modern day is the journey of how caregivers are seen and represented in films. And they influence us.
Yeah. I mean, in Pico, it was how they showed that you can be angry at your father and still love him, right? Like, that was amazing. That was and this is like how films can actually just revolutionize
Our approach in society.
your thought towards something, because it's almost it's brought in so subtly that you don't even realize.
That's right.
I didn't even realize about the caregiving aspect and how the transition has happened up until you mentioned it.
One of the classics is Anand, no? Zindagi badi honi chahiye,
Anand,
lambi
yeah.
thi. Right? And the whole struggle of what it means to be faced with that. And there are many, many films, right? So there are many, many films and they're shown in a certain way. Now, if we have a critical mind, we will be able to see the film and make a commentary on what it means for us as a society.
Yeah.
And whether that's okay or not.
Yeah.
So it is really important to have these spaces where we are critically looking at what is being fed to us. So there has been a shift in advertisements as well. So this multi-arm woman is now thankfully gone. And now we see different facets of women being shown in some of the modern day advertisements. No longer are washing powder ads and washing machine ads only about women and so on and so forth. So caregiving in print and pictures is our endeavor to be able to highlight how caregiving is and can shift. The next is Heart of Care. Heart of Care is leveraging different forms of art to communicate about care. So can you use poetry? Can you use sculptures? Can you use pictures? Today, if you were to do a Google search on caregivers or care, you will come up with fairly stereotypical pictures of hands and holding and old age and whatever. But caregiving can be crocheting a shawl for your loved one.
Yeah.
Caregiving can be putting an arm around somebody who is absolutely fine. And it can be a picture of care.
Yeah, I tried that once. It didn't like a lot of That's that. I had to stop.
Yeah, maybe
I
you
was
need to
let
try
off with a
something.
warning. I
Maybe
was
you
let
should
off
try
with
crocheting again.
crocheting would have been safer.
Would have been safer, maybe.
Yeah.
But crocheting is also a needle that you can poke many times.
Times.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll just bring back from your experience of that lonely caregiver
Yeah.
to today, where you are providing a Saathi for the caregiver.
Yeah.
So there's a caregiver for the caregiver,
Yeah.
which is one of the phrases that you used in the
Yeah.
beginning. And then now, also in keeping with your bumblebee personality, there are so many domains that Caregiver Saathi covers.
Yeah.
Starting from print, start going into the corporate space, going into how it's the conversations are played out, the diaries. So there are so many domains and so many aspects that are that you've mentioned. Now, as a doctor, I'm asking a very practical, worldly question, which is like, hospitals have a lot of disease and caregivers and everyone there, and that's like the melting pot of everything else. How has your response or your interactions, how have they been with hospitals directly? Community is one, and hospitals.
Unfortunately, over time, hospitals look at caregivers, like I said, as ancillary to the patient.
Mm,
And over time, because it's an industry, what has happened is patient is your source of revenue,
okay.
right? Because patient is the source of revenue, and the caregiver is the person who is the mundu who runs around for you,
Correct.
is why many people would say that, so that's the person who sits outside the ICU, the person who
Yeah.
does the billing, the person who will be the
Yeah.
representative,
Yeah.
right? If the patient, and more than the patient, actually, even the disease is all that the medical fraternity is focused on, patient comes next. Like, for
Okay.
example, we know those examples of saying, oh, the surgery was really successful, you cut half the throat out because of throat cancer, right? People make that comment, right? Now, where did it leave the person?
Yeah.
And what does it mean for the caregiver?
Caregiver.
Right? If your lens is going to be that this is a source of revenue for me, and this is a number for me, then your approach will be something.
So,
Right? Now, caring for the caregiver, where the caregiver will reduce the number of visits to the hospital, can potentially be at cross purposes
with the business model.
with the business idea of a hospital. Unless the hospital prides in being an institution which pushes living well,
Thank you.
which pushes the idea of preventive healthcare,
Yeah.
Mm,
which pushes the idea of we are a healthcare institution that will ensure the well-being, that in a way you will never need a hospital.
yeah. That kind of an investment in soft power, developing
Yes.
that soft power. Yeah.
The purpose of a hospital, so for example, the purpose of a jail is to be a deterrent that crime does not exist. But we know that studies over studies have proven that that does not necessarily reduce crime in countries that have jails. Purpose of a hospital or a healthcare thing is only emergency acute care. Most other healthcare should be preventable. Right? You cannot have a metric of how much revenue was earned from a patient. The metric has to be how many people were prevented from coming into the healthcare system.
And that sometimes is at cross purposes.
And that sometimes is at cross purposes. And when that is at cross purposes, it takes a long time to explain
and change.
So hopefully, as time passes, we will have visionary healthcare professionals who will lead hospitals, where we will be able to shift the metric of healthcare for what it is, rather than an industry. But the purpose of healthcare is to ensure well-being and prevent, rather than
and have a bigger lens and have a broader lens of looking
as
at
they
things.
say in my house, aapke muh mein ghee shakkar.
No, but you're right. If healthcare does work in this way, there's a high chance the hospitals will shut down because it's definitely not profitable,
And
to
maybe that's a good thing. Why? See, we fear that, like, oh my God, what are you saying? Shutting down hospitals? I think it's a great thing if hospitals are not required.
Yeah, I mean it's a
Hospitals are
great
small and they are required for
specific.
intense
Yeah,
emergency
yeah,
care.
yeah. Intense emergency, acute,
but they've
Yeah,
become a place
that
for
kind of
everything now.
care.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And maybe,
This is
that we need to
Sure.
kind of reimagine and reframe in our mind what is healthcare and what does it mean to have a healthy healthcare system.
This is what we talk about in palliative care, right? That hospitals were evolved, or modern medicine has evolved to take better care of people with acute illnesses, with short term illnesses, with trauma, injury, infections, those kind of things. Hospitals and the modern medical system is great at. But chronic illnesses, long term care, good nursing care, and just that kind of medical support that has to be integrated into everyday life, and not like stop everything that you are doing and be in the hospital for a few months at a time. That is not what we are that good
And
at
hospitals don't look at caregivers, so
That's
Hmm.
right. So I'm really hoping that um, mm, we will be able to get to a point where we can say that, today's caregivers are potentially people. Like, I can speak for myself. Okay, having been a caregiver, I do not like the idea of going to a hospital.
Mm.
Right? It is so hard for me.
Yeah, it's
It's a
difficult.
place where I have experienced trauma.
Mm.
It's a place where I have not had good experiences while being a caregiver. I do not see it as a place of healing, as a place I want to visit because it will do me good.
it's interesting because not only do patients or people with illnesses experience this trauma, but also relatives who take care of them share
For
this
sure.
experience.
For
Interesting.
sure. I got really triggered. I went to one of the best hospitals in
Freudian slip, you said hotel, but
Freudian.
it's okay.
I realized that.
Mm.
I went to one of the best hospitals in, most likely a hotel in Mumbai. And as I was entering, there was a gentleman who was struggling to enter. I was reminded of the time that I took my father,
Mm.
right? And I really struggled, and my father had a moment, and I was like, my God, over 20 years, things have not changed,
Mm.
right? It's an irrational,
I understand what you're
not
saying.
in my heart, okay? But my real wish is that healthcare becomes a part of our everyday life in
Yeah.
a manner that we can truly service those who need it at the time that they need it, in a manner that it can be interventionist or whatever that it is, but not a business model.
So, pulling from that, like, this is what I would like to end this conversation with. This, given all the things that you have said, and especially so much of it about medicine, about caregiving, what is your vision for Caregiver Saathi?
And linked to that is the point that you were making. So let me just say that I found it very interesting that you said you have so many dimensions or domains. I don't see them as many dimensions or domains.
Mm-hmm.
I just see them as different windows through which you can, or different lenses with which you're trying to solve the same problem.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right? I think that's the difference. I don't see that working with corporates is distinct from working
Yeah.
with caregivers
Correct.
in
Yeah,
general,
yeah.
or working with the
Totally.
healthcare fraternity. If you have a systemic view,
Okay.
you're looking at the full system,
Okay.
then there are multiple stakeholders.
They.
Okay.
And you touch one part, and if you only touch that one part, you're not shifting the system. So you have to be able to address it in multiple ways and multiple aspects of, and you have to be able to have the bigger picture of the healthcare system overall. And there are many, many players in it. ranging from the diagnostics, the pharma companies, the palliative care institutions, the hospitals. We have to remember that hospital has been designed for a certain purpose, and therefore they will be. And if they are going to be at cross purposes, we have to be sensitive to that if we want them to change.
Yeah.
True.
Right? We cannot say that they are wrong. They're not wrong, but
It's market
they're not
forces.
right.
So
Yeah, but they're not
interesting.
right either. So then what are you going to do? Right? So linked to that is the second point, which is that education, awareness, and sensitization for caregivers is step one. Step two is solving for caregivers. And what Caregiver Saathi aspires to do is to provide safe spaces, individually or in groups, so that caregivers can solve for themselves or seek resources.
Yeah.
Right? So I want you to imagine a world in which, using technology, guess why? We are able to make access to information, community, and resources easier for caregivers. That's when it'll be a Saathi,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So at your arm's length, should you pick up your phone, you should be able to access information, a helping hand, resources, and be able to make a meaningful decision or a choice.
Yeah.
And technology is a wonderful, wonderful
That's
thing.
a wonderful tool to help you do
If
that.
it can help you get groceries in 10 minutes, it can help you get information of all kinds
Yeah.
and all kinds of things, right? If it can help you hail a cab anywhere, then why not healthcare?
Great point.
That's a very admirable vision.
Yes, with your help, we will get there.
Wish you all the best with on this bike journey of yours. And we also hope to follow suit on bikes of our own.
Yes, totally. It's always fun when there are multiple bikers.
Superb. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, Bhavana.
Yes, I'm
Thanks a
not sure
lot.
if I answered your last question. So I'm going to answer
okay.
that, which is that a big part of this is about taking responsibility for different stakeholders to care for themselves. And I think this involves understanding that self-care is our responsibility as adults. If we become adults, then not only are we responsible to care for ourselves, we are responsible to care for ourselves with the help of others.
An extension of caring for
Yes.
yourself in the right way.
Yes. So, for example, I cannot care for myself by only going to a spa. Sometimes I care for myself by feeding my soul and volunteering at a facility.
Yeah, it's not that the antidote to working hard is to not work at all.
That's
It's
right.
like that. It's to do
That's right.
something that you
That's right.
like to do, or
That's right. So remember that you are a person who is playing multiple roles and also has multiple identities. So how do you balance?
so moving from one role to another within your identity can be a good way to actually
That's right.
curb burnout, to actually reduce
That's right.
burnout. It can be a form of self-care.
It is.
Interesting.
It is. And I do believe that sometimes we realize burnout, and burnout is can also be a gift. In my case, it was a gift because I learned to pause and transform what I thought was my core grief to my purpose.
Yeah. But that's like a very phoenix like personality it requires, but not many are blessed, unfortunately, with that. Some burn out and they're like crisp. There's not much they can come back from there. But what you did is remarkable and very inspiring.
Thank you.
Very inspiring and phoenix like. I don't know if that's I don't know if bumblebees have that character, but yeah.
I would like to say that actually sometimes people feel crisp, or sometimes people feel that they are really burnt out and you cannot find your way back, which is why communities are important.
Very important.
It is not, I cannot say I did it myself.
Yeah.
I had many, many people who supported me. So
Yeah.
it's not, like something I did alone.
Absolutely. And if I were to just kind of sum this up, it's also something interesting that I read about the weight of, the weight or the blessings or everything of all those ancestors and all their struggles
Yes,
behind you.
Yeah.
Like,
totally.
if that brings us to tie it back to what you started with, moving from during the time of partition, losing your grandfather when he was young. You crossed that milestone, 40,
Mm.
and then and he was a doctor, and then having this flamboyant grandmom who was a horse rider and things like that. So all those blessings, somewhere, all of that is, we are
Yes,
doing it because of them, I
that's
guess. Yeah.
true. I'm so grateful that you are doing this because I do think living well is a great idea and we can all live well in multiple ways. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bhavna.
thanks,
Thank
Bhavna.
you.
Thanks a lot.